Welcome to the JP8 report. This is James Pierce with the JP8 report, episode 360. Good afternoon, everyone. This is James Pierce as I'm getting everything in order. All right, so I'm all ready. All right, welcome to the JP8 report. Just wondering for people out there watching right now, including Rob, which is one of my really, really good friends. Does all my data show up on the podcast, the title of it and everything in the description? Because if I could show you my picture of my Rumble studio, looks like everything disappeared off of it for some strange reason, which is weird. Really, really weird. All right. As we get started, we've got ramping up. We got people showing up on there. That's good. I want to show you a really cool thing. My wife is out matter of fact, with Rob's wife right now at a quilt show in Georgetown, Texas. All right. So if you like quilting, or your wife likes quilting, or your husband likes quilting, they have a quilt show in Georgetown, Texas right now. Well, she just sent me a picture. This was really cool. It's called an iron rest, okay? And $25. She was asking me if she can go ahead and get it. I think that's a really good investment. Isn't that cool? Thought y'all would like to see that. Man, that's awesome. You never know what you find, okay? That's pretty good, because you never want to lay a hot iron on material and walk away, right? All right, so that being said, let's get on with our business, right? So click the follow button. If you have not already clicked it, click it and become a follower of the podcast, all right? And then click that little thumbs up, okay? Give us a like, and chat. Chat is very important, okay? Rob likes people that like chat. I like people that chat. I got a buddy of mine on here named Richard Derby. He's Covite for life. He likes to chat. We got a lot of American stuff right now. And Texas. I got a piece of a Texas history, very important Texas history that I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes also. So if you can, put a Texas flag and an American flag in the chat. All right? We'll get the party started. I started. All right. So that being said, America 250. America 250. Now, this is a part 2 of a letter I started this morning. So if you want to hear part 1, go back and watch JP's morning brief, which is Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 7. And this morning I had like a hard out. I had a boat because my wife Ann had to leave. She had to get up and get ready to leave and stuff. So I didn't even get the braid out to events like I usually do. But so I read part of this letter. So it's a 1-pager. All right. And all right. So, and this is a letter from George Washington to Landon Carter on the 27th of March, 1776. And don't forget, put an American flag and a Texas flag in the live chat, please, okay? And so if you're going to pick up, if you're actually reading the letter, I'm almost done with the second paragraph. It starts off with, however, they thinking, as we have been since informed, that we had got 2 formally posted before the storm abated, for we worked through the whole of it, which is starting on the just before the 17th, when they started to work over at Dorchester Heights and stuff to build the fortifications. the British were going to send 4,000 men, I believe, to storm and overrun the point, right? But the weather got bad, and they weren't able to actually storm the point and take it over from the Americans. And it gave us enough time so we could start delivering artillery rounds into the city. So, all right, just so you know, too much to be hurt by them, and apprehending a great annoyance from us, resolved upon to precipitate retreat, and accordingly embarked in as much hurry and as much confusion as ever troops did on the 17th, not having got their transports half fitted, and leaving King's property in Boston to the amount as is supposed to be of 30 of 40,000 pounds in provisions, stores, among the many pieces of cannon and mortars, and a number of shells, shot shells, and are left. Their baggage wagons, artillery carts, which they had been 18 months or more preparing, were destroyed, thrown in the docks, and found drifted on every shore. In short, Dunbar's destruction of stores after General Braddock's defeated affords but an imperfect idea of what was seen here. The enemy now is in Nantasket Road, about 9 miles below Boston, wherein in King's Road they have been ever since embarkation. How to account for their stay there, I know not. The inhabitants of Boston thinks it is to arrange for the lading of vessels which are thrown in such disorder as to render it unsafe to trust themselves upon the wide ocean until the loads could be properly adjusted. Others think they mean to pass over the equinoctial gale before they put to sea. But it is any doubt on my mind whether they may not be waiting for an opportunity which they got to hold force collected, no post to guard, and as I understand, a reinforcement for the West Indies arrived to retrieve the honor of their arms, and seems to be in general opinion of people here to have undergone some disgrace. The works on Bunker Hill are left standing, and very formidable they are. Boston has such a much better fate than they could possibly have expected, considering the time it was closed shut up. The damage being nothing equal to report, we are now in full possession of the town and are fortifying the harbor to prevent a return if they should incline to it. As New York is the most important object that they can have in view of account of its commanding Hudson River, leading towards Canada and separating the northern and southern colonies, it appeared necessary for me to take measures for its security, and therefore I detached 6 regiments instantly to that place as soon as I could see the coast cleared. Shall follow immediately with the rest of the army, leaving a few regiments for the security of this government and for executing such works as are laid out for the defense of Boston and the harbor. Your acquaintance, General Lee, being appointed to the command of the forces in the Southern Department, affords you opportunity to make your wishes known on the spot. But I am inclined to think he is already provided with aide-de-camps. Indeed, I know he is, unless some accident has happened to one of them since he left New York. I must now, my good sir, beg your favor of you to present my compliments to Mr. Carter, your son, your neighbors of Mount Airy, and any other inquiring friends, and believe me to be your dear sir, your most obedient, humble servant, George Washington. P.S. Always a P.S., right? All right. Since I began this letter, the fleet has sailed from Nantasket Island 6 more regiments I shall march on for New York tomorrow. Enclosed is a list of the enemy's strength by victualling return the Saturday before they left Boston. George Washington. All right, the fight is on, right? It'll be a long 6 years. All right, and then here's a short one from George Washington to Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Reed for the 28th of March, which is tomorrow. Dear Sir, General Howe has a grand maneuver in view, or has made an inglorious retreat. Yesterday evening, the remains of the British fleet left Nantasket Road, and except for an armed vessel or two, hath left the coast quite clear of an enemy. 6 more regiments will instantly march for New York. 2 days hence another, and a day or two after the whole force, except about 3 or 4 regiments, to erect such works as shall be adjudged necessary for the security of this place. In 3 or 4 days from this date, I shall follow myself. In other words, the moment I can put things upon such a footing as the exigency of affairs may require, I shall depart. I have received your letter on the 15th, but hurried as well suppose me to be in sending expresses one to another. Upon this occasion, I shall only add that I am with sincere regard your affectionate, most obedient servant, George Washington. And that was to Lieutenant Colonel Reed. Lots of stuff is happening. You know, he's made the decisions. He's sending forces to New York, and he's about to leave from Boston area to New York. Another good letter. Now, if you're proud to be an American after reading that, put an American flag in the live chat, please. I'll do it again. Proud to be an American, especially being a soldier, and you understand that stuff. All right. All right. So next, Texas. Our Texas. So on this day in 1836, which was 190 years ago, all right, we suffered a defeat of unimaginable expectation. You would not believe what happened. If you're from Texas, you would know. All right. So this is a little bit of reading, all right, but it's worth it. The Goliad Massacre was an event in the Texas Revolution that occurred on March 27th, 1836, following the Battle of Refugio and the Battle of Goliad. 425 to 445 prisoners of war from the Texan Army of the Republic of Texas were executed by the Mexican Army in the town of Goliad, Texas. The men surrendered under the belief they would be set free in a few weeks. However, this was not to be. Despite appeals for clemency by General Jose Herrera, he's the Mexican general, the massacre was carried out by Lieutenant Colonel Jose Nicolas de la Portilla under the order of the General and President of Mexico, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. The entire Texan force was killed except for 28 men who faked their death and escaped. Among these were Herman Ehrenberg, who later wrote an account of the massacre, William Lockhart Hunter, who survived despite being bayoneted and clubbed with a musket. Because of the intervention of Francisco Alvarez, known as the Angel of Goliad, 20 more men were spared to act as doctors, interpreters, or workers. Also spared were the 75 soldiers of Miller and Nashville Battalion who were given white armbands. Among those killed were commanders Colonel James Fannin from the Coleto Battle, and Lieutenant Colonel William Ward of the Refugio battle. That is crazy that even happened. But if you knew Santa Anna was bound and determined to set up an example of not only in Texas was there uh, dissension among people that are citizens of Mexico. It was all over the country. And he wanted to make a point, and especially with armed insurrection. And he was given orders no quarter. I'm at the VA. Oh, okay. So we got two chatters today. Come on, give us. I need 10 more unique chatters that have never said anything on the podcast. They make a comment, a flag or hello or something. Okay. But so before this is the background. After Santa Anna learned that a force of Texas rebels was headed toward Matamoros, which is by Brownsville, he sent General Urrea to march north along the Texas coast to stop them. Urrea arrived at Matamoros and worked to secure cooperation from the local inhabitants on January 31st, 1836. Meanwhile, Sam Houston had persuaded all but 70 or 100 men under the leaders of Frank Johnson and James Grant to give up on the expedition and defend locations in Texas. Principality of Goliad. On February 12th, Fannin took most of the men to defend the Presidio La Bahia at Goliad, which he renamed Fort Defiance. On February 16th, Urrea crossed the Rio Grande with 188 cavalry and 205 infantry. He recruited about 200 Tejano volunteers in the area, including some previously sympathetic to Texans, to join him. At 3 a.m. on February 27th, Urrea's advanced patrol surprised Johnson and about 45 men, initiating the Battle of San Patricio. Urrea's forces killed 16 men and took 24 prisoners. Johnson and 4 others escaped in the darkness and joined Fannin's command at Goliad, where they said all the prisoners had been executed. They had first given his account at a ranch where he had taken refuge after the escape. Urrea had sent 18 of the 24 prisoners to Matamoros, where they were sentenced to death, but later released. Johnson's news persuaded Fannin to abandon any further attempt to send relief to the Alamo or try to secure badly needed supplies at Matagorda, and he prepared the Presidio La Bahia at Goliad to defense against the advancing Mexican army. On March 2nd, this is right before the Alamo fell, at the Battle of Agua Dulce, Grant was killed, as were about 20 other men under his command. On March 6th, the Mexican force under Santa Anna stormed Alamo and killed the garrison. We know that, right? On March 14th, Colonel William Ward and 200 men who were sent to help Captain Amon B. King evacuated the colonists of Refugio and were surrounded by Refugio's by Urrea's force. Although Ward and his men fled that night during a blinding rainstorm, the Mexicans overtook part of Ward's force, killing 18 and capturing 31. King and a group were executed on March 16th. You see how this is going, people, all right? On March 16th at Refugio, after capturing one of Fannin's messengers who was carrying dispatches that told of the commander's plan to wait at Goliad and retreat after King and Ward returned. Urrea ordered the execution of 30 prisoners who he decided were mercenaries. He freed more than 20 others who he determined to be Mexicans or colonists so he would not be hindered by taking prisoners along his advance on Fannon's force. March 19th. Uriah had quickly advanced and surrounded 300 men of the Texan army on the open prairie near La Bahia, which is Goliad. The 2-day battle of Coleto ensued, and the Texans holding their own on the first day. The Mexicans received overwhelming reinforcements and heavy artillery. In this critical predicament, Fannin and the majority of the men voted to surrender the Texan forces on March 20th. That's 1 week ago, and I talked about that in the on the podcast. Led to believe that they would be paroled and released into the United States, they returned to their fort at Goliad, now their prison. Albert Clinton Horton and his company had acted as an advance and rear guards for Fannon's company. Surprised by the overwhelming Mexican force, most were chased off and escaped, but 18 were captured and marched back to Goliad. The 75 soldiers of William Parsons Miller had the Nashville Battalion were captured on March 20th and marched to Goliad on March 23rd. On March 22nd, William Ward and the Georgia Battalion, 80 men plus Ward, surrendered after escaping from the Battle of Refugio. About 26 men were retained at Victoria as laborers, but 55 of the prisoners were marched into Goliad on March 25th. The Mexicans took the Texans back to Goliad, where they were held as prisoners at Fort Defiance, the Presidio de la Bahia. The Texans thought they would be set free in a few weeks. Uriah departed Goliad, leaving Colonel Jose Nicolas de la Portilla in command. Uriah wrote Santa Anna to ask for clemency for the Texans under a decree that Santa Anna had pushed for, which was passed by the Mexican Congress on December 30th of 1835. Armed foreigners taken in combat were to be treated as pirates and executed. Uriah wrote in his diary that he wished to elude these orders as far as possible without compromising my personal responsibility, quote unquote. Santa Anna responded to his entreaty by repeatedly ordering Uriah to comply with the law and execute the prisoners. He also had a similar order sent directly to the commanding officer, to the officer commanding the post at Goliad. This order was received by Portilla on March 26, which was yesterday, who decided it was his duty to comply despite receiving a countermanding order from Uriah later the same day. The next day, which, believe it or not, was Palm Sunday. Wow. The next day, Palm Sunday, March 27th, 1836, Portilla had between 425 and 445 Texans march from Fort Defiance in 3 columns on the Bear Road. The non-Texans here call it Bexar, but it's Bear. The San Patricio Road and the Victoria Road, between 2 rows of Mexican soldiers. The sick and injured stayed in the chapel. The ones marching out of the fort were told they were gathering wood and other supplies, and they believed they would be freed soon. The Mexicans forced them to turn facing away from the soldiers. Confused, the Texan rebels were shot point blank. Wounded survivors were clubbed and knifed to death. The sick and injured in the chapel were killed in their beds and shot against the chapel walls. 40 Texans were unable to walk. 39 were killed inside the fort under the direction of Captain Carolino Huerta of the Tres Villas Battalion, and Colonel Garay saving one, Jack Shackelford. Fannin was the last to be executed after seeing his men killed. Should be a war crime. Well, executing prisoners of war is a war crime anyway. He was taken by Mexican soldiers to the courtyard in front of the chapel, blindfolded, seated in a chair, and he made 3 requests: that his personal possessions be sent to his family, to be shot in the heart, not in the face, and be given a Christian burial. The soldiers took his belongings, shot him in the face, and burned his body with those of the other Texans killed that day. The entire Texan force was killed, except for 28 men who faked their death and escaped. Among them was Herman Eulenberg, who later wrote an account of the massacre. William Lockhart Hunter, also of the New Orleans Greys, who survived despite being bayoneted and clubbed with a musket. 4 members of Shackelford's Red Rovers: Dillard Cooper, Zachariah S. Brooks, William Simpson, and Isaac Hamilton, who escaped after days on the run because of the intervention of Francisca Alvarez, known as the Angel Goliad. 20 more men, including Shackelford, were spared to act as doctors, interpreters, and workers. Also spared were the 75 members of Miller's and Nashville Battalion, and were later marched to Matamoros, that's south. Spared men were given white armbands. While wearing them, they could walk around freely. They were advised not to take the white armband off, since Mexican troops were hunting for those who had escaped from Coleto, Victoria, and the massacre itself. That is why at the Battle of San Jacinto next month, you heard cries of "Remember the Alamo" and "Remember Goliad." There were some that said "Remember Gonzalez," but that was one of our victories in October 2nd, 1835. But remember Goliad and remember the Alamo. And I'm going to show you the battle flag for Goliad. That's the battle flag for Goliad. You can take my right arm while it's dripping in your blood. That's exactly what it means. All right? Texans forever. That's exactly what it is. Texans forever. In the history of our country, we've only had 2 revolutions. We had the American Revolution and we had the Texas Revolution. You can't count the Civil War. The American Revolution and the Texas Revolution. Everything else is the same, right? So thank you for allowing me to read that. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to put there we go. There's the American flag, and I meant to make that a Texas flag. There we go. All right. Now you know some valuable Texas history. And we got to go all the way to April, toward the end of April, with the Battle of San Jacinto. Well, we rubbed the blood on the Mexican army. And Santa Anna ran like a little kid dressed as a private instead of the commanding general and president. All right, so here we go. Iran update. Operation Epic Fury. We have the first of the 82nd of the 82nd Airborne is supposed to have been deployed. Don't know where. I'm not going to tell you unless it's publicly acknowledged. 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit should be in the Persian Gulf right now. They were due there today. So you have a lot of soldiers there, and then there are possibly about 10,000 more are on alert to be deployed into the region also. So what you don't know is what the president and the Secretary of War and their advisors are telling them through strategy how to use these soldiers, keep them in reserve as a show of force or what. It's to keep the Iranians guessing. All right, you keep your enemy on their toes. Sooner or later, they're going to relax and catch themselves off guard, and that's when we win. All right, Thursday, the United Arab Emirates, or the UAE, intercepted 15 missiles and 11 drones. Today, they're like 8 hours in front of us. They've intercepted 6 more missiles and 9 UAVs, which is a drone. All right. Iranian hardliners still want a nuclear weapon. That's why we're there. That's why we're destroying everything in sight. I say, turn it to glass. I mean, get it over with. The Houthis are still threatening to join the war. I believe if they join the war, it'd be a one and out. They don't have too much more they can stand, too many more legs they could stand on. Hezbollah attacked a Christian church earlier today. Trump is giving Iran until the 6th of April, which is 10 more days. And hold it. Okay, so what I wanted to tell you was, wait a minute, go back. Oh, there we go. All right, so what was I talking about? Kuwait got attacked too, if you didn't hear. President, wow, a lot more updates than I thought. 303 U.S. service members have been wounded since the combat action began. 273 have already returned to duty. And what I'm trying to find out is, I saw it just a few minutes ago, and I forgot to write it down. And where is it? Hold it. Oop, I missed it. I can't find it. Okay, so I believe the deadline is April 6th, and I believe it was 5 p.m. Eastern, I think. Either 8 a.m. Eastern or 5 p.m. Eastern was the deadline that the president gave the Iranians to accept the 15-point plan that was presented through the Pakistanis in Islamabad and given to the Iranians, and they said it was confirmed that it did happen. The IDF has said they've killed 750 Hezbollah soldiers. There was a Thai flagged cargo ship that was hit by a projectile, and 3 people were missing, and 20 were rescued. I did tell you the Kuwaiti port was under attack by 6 drones, and Israel says they're set to move up a level on the number of attacks in Iran and southern Lebanon. All right, and like I said, updated wounded in action was 303, with 273 already returned to duty. All right, Brent crude oil was trading at $110.51 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate was at $98.07. It's like a $12 difference. And then the Dow was about 45,576. That is your Iran update. They make it hard to find this stuff. What are we doing on time? We're at 435. Okay. So as we get started, I know everybody wants to hear about the Congress acting on the shutdown. I got better news. It came out of the House of Representatives this morning. If you know Sheila McCorrmick from Florida, you know what I'm about to talk about. Hold on. I just got breaking news. Vance accuses Biden of weakening anti-fraud safeguards. That was the breaking news. All right. So yesterday there was a trial in the House of Representatives Ethics Committee, and the committee members are 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. It's constituted like that on purpose, so not one party has an upper hand on another party. It's all equal, flat out. So there's nothing biased amongst anyone. So yesterday, in a public trial, before the ethics committee, Representative Sheila Chairfulus McCormick was put on trial. 26 counts, right? Bipartisan House lawmakers voted to kickstart a process that could lead to the expulsion of a congressional Democrat accused of laundering millions of dollar disaster relief funds into her campaign account. Full stop, right there. If you look over my shoulder, you know I've ran for office before. Multiple occasions. Do you know how hard it is to ask someone to contribute to your political campaign? It's unbelievably hard to do something like that. And the Texas Ethics Commission puts enough safeguards in there to make sure the state of Texas doesn't get ripped off and individual donors don't get ripped off, and holds accountable anyone that's running for office in the state of Texas. You don't dare lie, because you will get caught. This lady used disaster relief funds to put into her campaign account. Those are fun. Disaster relief funds would probably be from a hurricane or COVID, one of the two, because she's from Jacksonville. All right. The House Investigative Subcommittee approved a motion for summary judgment, effectively finding Representative Sheila McCormick, Democrat, Florida, guilty of nearly all alleged violations outlined in the committee earlier this year. The verdict came after a rare public ethics hearing on Thursday, the first since 2010, that lasted more than 6 hours as lawmakers from both parties grilled McCormick's counsel. The 8-member Judiciary Committee, held by Representative Michael Guest, Republican Mississippi, announced its decision in a written statement Friday morning. Quote, after careful deliberation that lasted well past midnight, the Judiciary Subcommittee found that counts 1 through 15 and 17 through 26 of the SAV, which is the Statement of Alleged Violations, had been proven. Committee leaders said in the statement. The panels mirrored the charges against McCormick, who is facing separate federal criminal indictment, arranged from using ineligible funds to finance her campaign, to repeatedly filing false financial disclosure forms, and seeking special favors with recipients of earmarked funding requests. The panel, which will meet after the Easter recess to determine its recommended punishment, could be as severe as expulsion. Representative Greg Steube of Florida, Republican of Florida, has vowed to move forward with his resolution, which would expel McCormick regardless of the outcome. Under House rules, 2/3 of the lawmakers have to agree to expel a member, meaning Steube's resolution would need the support of some Democrats. They would need 2/3, half is 218, so they need another 110. So it would need to 318, I believe around 330, I think it's 335 members of the House of Representatives that would have to vote in the affirmative to excuse her from Congress. All right. House Democrat leadership has largely stood by McCormick so far, though some congressional Democrats are signaling their discomfort with the allegations against their indicted colleague. Some allegations before us are extremely serious. Mark Dessier from California, a Democrat, said before the start of the hearing, they not only concern an individual's members' conduct, but also implicate the public's confidence in the House integrity as an institution. McCormick first won the election in 2021, so that means if she is accused of stealing more than $5 million in disaster relief funds that were improperly paid to her family's health care company, along criminal allegations, she and her siblings allegedly used the illicit funds to jumpstart her congressional campaign for personal use, including the purchase of a large diamond ring. McCormick appeared to have worn it in her official congressional portrait. Wow. Boy, I hope I didn't lose my internet. Okay, I haven't. All right. McCormick pleaded not guilty to the stunning federal charges in 2025. If convicted in federal court, she faces 53 years in prison. She's 47 right now. That means she would turn 100. Oh, wow. The House Ethics Panel's investigation into McCormick preceded 2025 federal and criminal indictment by more than 2 years. During the time, McCormick shifted between 4 different attorneys while largely refusing to cooperate with the bipartisan panel. Wow, this is unbelievable. She is in lots of trouble. Okay, so to finish up with this before we get to the other money stuff, members of both parties appeared unconvinced by Barzzi's argument, which is her attorney, attempting to claim that McCormick was entitled to millions of dollars she accepted from her family's company that stemmed from FEMA overpayments. When he claimed that an undated chart was evidence of a profit-sharing agreement showing her legal title to the money, the bipartisan panel appeared visually perturbed. And then this one Republican from Nathaniel Moran from Texas said, I did a lot of business transaction law for a number of years before I came to Congress. I drafted a lot of profit-sharing agreements. Never saw one that was just a chart and that was unsigned. This lady's in trouble. And what it looks like is FEMA disaster, okay? So what I don't know, but I bet there was I would think there was a hurricane. They hit the east coast of Florida and did severe damage in the Florida area, right? Now, her family owns a medical company, right? How much, if you've been watching the news, how much of that's been going around with Medicare and Medicaid fraud that's ripping the country off by millions and millions of dollars? How much of the federal debt is fraud, waste, and abuse? Would you say $2 or $3 trillion, maybe a little bit more than that, $5 trillion of fraud that would affected our federal deficit, federal debt? I mean, she actually thought she was entitled to the audacity that she actually wore, and you can't see it, but there's the picture of her, and she's wearing the ring. Wow, unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, what do I got over here? I got that there. You got this. So last night while we were sleeping, all right, uh, well, before we were sleeping, President Trump did a great thing, okay? And I'm going to show it again. This is what I think of President Trump. You ready for this? That's what I think about President Trump. Make America great again. If you are a Republican and you're watching this right now, you need to remember that and take it to heart. If the president makes a recommendation to you, you need to follow through with it, John Thune, because you're messing it all up. Make America great again. That's exactly what that means. All right. So President Trump yesterday signed an executive order declaring a national emergency at America's airports because he got fed up with the TSA workers not receiving their paychecks, and they're about to miss their third paycheck. So fast forward a couple more hours, because he signed this like at 8 o'clock last night. The Senate caught wind of what the president did, and they got upset. And then they said, well, let's do this deal that we've been trying for weeks to get passed through the Democrats, and they keep blocking it because it won't pass cloture over and over and over again, right? They even voted on it yesterday. It fell 54 to 47 because, you have to hit 60 to hit cloture so you can advance it. It fell again. And then all of a sudden, last night, about 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, right before I woke up, right, because I get up at 4 a.m. Central to do my show prep and stuff, they proposed a bill in the open Senate, and it passed. The same bill that the Republicans have been trying to get the Democrats to vote for weeks. By unanimous consent. They didn't even take a roll call vote, so you can't even tell who voted. So it's like by unanimous consent, all in favor say aye. And that was it. And the door couldn't hit them in the butt fast enough. They were evacuating. You know how March 17th was evacuation day in Boston in 1776? This morning, March 27th, 10 days later, in 2026, was evacuation day in Washington, D.C. Everyone was flying out to get out of town for 2 weeks to celebrate Easter without making sure the job was done. So, we're going to go over part one because there's 2 parts of this thing, right? Make sure I got this set to the side. President Trump said he will sign an executive order to address airport disruptions. We got that. That was last night, 8 o'clock, right? Announcing the move on a Truth Social post that framed the situation as a national emergency. And I failed to get that to put up. I'm sorry about that. Because the Democrats have recklessly created a true national crisis, I'm using my authorities under the law to protect our great country. Therefore, I am going to sign an order to immediately pay our TSA agents in order to address the emergency situation. And the move comes as a 41-day partial government shutdown has disrupted the TSA, causing long lines in airports and amid the standoff with DHS funding. Trump accused the Democrats of refusing to fund immigration enforcement and creating chaos at the airports while thanking TSA agents for their work. So, wow. I mean, you can put it as another point. Let me go put this over here. These senators are fleeing. We're at 1250. The senators are fleeing our country, our capital. I'm sorry about that. And they're getting paid. they're fully paid. Their staffers are fully paid. The TSA workers are not paid. Elon Musk tried to say, hey, he wanted to pay, but according to federal law, they're not allowed to. I guess he could gift the money to them individually, but that's a lot of people, a lot of checks, right? But these knucklehead U.S. senators on the Republican side and on the Democrat side, hold on, is FEMA not being funded right now? I'm trying to do my, wow, you know what? That was my daughter. I don't know. If you're watching this right now, I know there's several people live watching. Is FEMA part of the Department of Homeland Security's shutdown right now? I don't know. I will get an answer for her, right? Because she's, what did she say? Renew my incident command courses. Yeah, so my daughter is an EMTB, and she's on the road to being an EMTA, and she got to do some school courses. So that was a good question, man. But they live out in Tennessee over by the 101st. Yeah, her husband's stationed at Fort Campbell. Alrighty. So that being said, 2 o'clock in the morning, they passed a vote, unanimous consent. Bend it in half. Said, you got TSA agents not being paid and sleeping in cars because they're being evicted from their houses. Because you know what? When you run out of money, you can't even afford a hotel room or a motel room or an inn. There's no room in the inn because you're dead broke, right? What do? You sleep in your car. You got to eat too. And you got to maintain your clothing. You have no money. And these senators fled. Like I said, the door in the Capitol couldn't hit them in the butt fast enough for them to get out of town. Fast forward to this morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the U.S. House of Representatives came into session and started debating the unanimous consent bill that they hurriedly passed in the dead of night, while even the congressmen were probably sound asleep, like most normal people, except for the ones that have to work night shift, right? And they're normal too, okay? Just senators are not abnormal. And I would even put it like this. How did John Cornyn vote on this? Well, he voted in the aye because it was unanimous consent. He could have objected to it to make sure it was right. All right? So House Republicans are preparing to reject REJECT, and I would have put it in all caps, all right? House Republicans are preparing to reject a Senate-passed funding bill to reopen most of the Department of Homeland Security. Chip Roy, okay? Chip Roy is running for the Attorney General in Texas. I don't support him running for Attorney General. That's my choice. I'm voting for Mays Middleton. But I regress. He said it's not going to pass as it is. He told the New York Post less than an hour after former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows posted on X that the DHS bill was dead in the House. DEA dead. Like Dan Bongino says, don't get dead. All right? This bill should have been right before it was sent to the U.S. House of Representatives. And they didn't. And they're fleeing like mice they're fleeing like cockroaches when the lights get turned on. Johnson is reported considering, that'd be the speaker, the House GOP lawmakers huddled for a conference call on Friday with Speaker Mike Johnson to deliberate over the funding bill provided by the Senate earlier this morning. Johnson is reportedly considering a stopgap measure to fund all DHS agencies, including ICE and CBP, for 60 days, but that would require the Senate to reconvene. Return to the scene of the crime, that is. The Senate passed the measure. The Senate passed measure would open DHS agencies except for ICE and CBP. The Senate Democrats have held up the funding for 42 days to protest ICE and CBP involved in fatal shootings of Good and Pernetti. They were rioters, right? Earlier this year. And the final sentence on this from the New York Post: one House GOP griped that the Senate shouldn't have left town before the bill reached President Trump's desk. Let me say that again. They shouldn't have left town before the bill reached the president's desk. These knuckleheads, how do I say it? Politically correct. No, who cares? These guys are begging to get primaried and thrown out of office. John Thune should have never presented that to the whole House under unanimous consent without the House agreeing to what the language on the measure says to make sure it made it to President Trump's desk. He is how do you say it? Man, I'm flustered with my language right now. Too many metaphors. Yeah. It's a shame that he is our majority leader. Sometimes I wish Mitch McConnell would still be in charge, but he's one of them too. We need some true leadership in the Senate. We got a man that's trying his best in the House, but we have this happening in the Senate. So the Senate's in recess until the 11th of April. And this bill is going to get defeated in the House. The TSA agents are still without pay unless the president's executive order goes through and doesn't get challenged in court, which these Democrats do all the time. And what do? Like Richard said, they're sleeping in cars because they're being evicted. Do hard-working Americans that are doing their best and get shortchanged off their paychecks from the federal government, do they deserve that type of treatment? They put their lives on the line. Their Transportation Security Administration. I think they all wear weapons on their side. They're the first line of defense in an airport and bus stations and train stations for us Americans to make sure that past 9/11 we travel safely to and from our destinations for roughly about $50,000 or $60,000 a year. Really. So my suggestion is Senator John Thune needs to issue a recall, and Chucky Schumer needs to be involved in it too because the Democrats, and recall them back to Washington, D.C., and they can sit in their Senate. And that's another thing. I got through 3 links on my podcast, and I'm already at 1 o'clock. Really. So that's another thing. When either house is in session and they're on camera, can we see more than just the person giving a speech? Can we see senators and congressmen in their appointed chairs instead of just speaking to a camera that nobody watches? because that's disrespectful to us Americans. If we're paying you $174,000 a year to represent me, I expect to see you. If you agree with me, let's say something in the chat. Say something in the regular comments, because that's totally ridiculous. Did anyone find out about the FEMA people? If FEMA is part of the partial shutdown? Because I know Coast Guard is, I know TSA is, I know the staffers and CBP and ICE are, but I can't remember who else is involved. I think HSI is involved in the shutdown. But yeah, I'm looking for an answer on FEMA. All right. Let me see. So what they were going to try to do, if this all passed, was to facilitate a reconciliation bill, maybe 2 reconciliation bills, to put the money that wouldn't be going to the ICE staffers, put that money and plus it up for a couple of years into the budget through reconciliation, and then possibly in September do another reconciliation bill. That's what they're planning on doing. All right. Man. And that's another one for reconciliation. They're going to use the reconciliation bill to try to put the $200 billion to fund the Operation Epic Fury, so we can get money back to the Pentagon where they can restock and rebuild our depleted munitions that we've been firing at the Iranians and giving to the Ukrainians. All right. So there's that one. All right. And then I just want to say a couple other things. Let's leave this one on good news before I go into premium, because I have to do some premium. If you're watching this, give me an American flag, please. Or just, hello, we agree with you, James. Your blood pressure is going through the roof and past the shingles of the roof. Just say, we agree with you, because that really, really makes me angry that we are, as Americans, being treated like this. Unbelievable. So the last thing I want to talk about on just the podcast, before we go to premium, right, is, and the reason why I keep asking for people to do chat was that I need 20 chatters per month, unique chatters, right? I got 10 for this month. I need 10 more before Wednesday morning. All right. Yo, dude. Man, you're great there, Rob. You're great. So back to this. So, and I mentioned this morning. Starting in June, right, the president, for the first time in 165 years, will be putting his signature on paper currency. From the $1 bill to the $100 bill. There'll be one, I don't know about the two, but 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100. The U.S. dollar bills will bear President Donald Trump's signature to mark the 250th anniversary of American independence. The Treasury Department said, a first for a sitting president. The president's signature will be placed on all U.S. paper currency and will replace the Treasurer of the United States signature on U.S. money for the first time in 165 years. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the move will recognize Trump's administration for historic achievements. Under President Trump's leadership, we are on a path toward unprecedented growth, economic growth, lasting dollar dominance, and fiscal strength and stability. There is no more powerful way to recognize the historic achievements of our country and President Trump than the U.S. dollars bearing his name, and it's only appropriate that this historic currency will be at the semi-quincentennial. The first $100 bills with the signatures of Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will be produced in June, followed by the other denominations in the coming months. Like I said earlier this morning, I am starting in June. I'm going to go and look for these because I want to put them away, all of them, one of each. And, when I'm gone, my grandson Nathaniel turns 18. His mom can give them to him. All of them with President Trump's signature on it. And one, hopefully two, 5, 10, 20, 50, and $100 bills. That would be tremendous. That would be tremendous. That makes you proud to be an American. All right. So, I didn't even get through everything. Let me mark that off. All right. So, if you are new to the program, before I sign off to premium, all right, and don't forget to click the follow button and click the like button. And then also do a chat. Well, I just lost the viewer. Man. All right. That's all right. But I'm gonna transition over. Remember, the morning brief is Monday through Friday, and I made the decision today. I am not going to do a podcast on Good Friday. Morning brief and the JP8 report. All right, unless something is glowing and something traumatic is happening, and I have to come online to do a podcast. But as of right now, there will be no podcast on Friday, Good Friday. All right. Let me see. All right. So I'll check y'all later. I'm transitioning over the premium. I hope y'all have a good day. I'm gonna just put the in slide up just for a second as I'm transitioning.